Legal luminary Prof. M.T. Ladan charts Nigeria's path to sustainable development at Gombe conference.
Celebrate, we even salute, we beat our chests and say we've made it, either through admission process or through employment process or through procurement process or through election in political action system. When we benefit from corruption and abuse of power, we even salute ourselves and then salute our families and create a situation that we are connected. That's why we benefit from it. So no one wants to actually go against the act of abuse of power and corrupt practices. And I think the earlier we begin to see all of us as critical stakeholders in supporting this constitutional process to address abuse of power and corrupt practices, the better for all of us, because that will essentially, reduce the level of, mismanagement of our resources such that it can benefit all of us.
Welcome to UMDA's Online TV, your #1 source for breaking news and live updates. In a compelling keynote address at Gombe State University's 2-day international conference, renowned legal scholar Professor M.T. Ladan dissected the intricate relationship between law, society, and Nigeria's pursuit of sustainable development, offering a masterclass in the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Speaking before an esteemed audience that included the Grand Kadi of Gombe State, Kadi Abdullahi Maikano Usman, and the chairman of the occasion, Chief Yakubu Philemon SAN, Prof. Ladan painted a picture of a legal framework at a critical juncture.
Development is not sustainable when it cannot actually, address the poverty level of the citizens of a given country. Development is also not sustainable where it cannot protect the environment against all forms of harms, particularly pollution of the water and the air, degradation of the land, and protection of the natural resources for the common good of all. Any development of a nation that grows actually on paper when the people of that country sink in poverty or their purchasing power is actually weak or very low, cannot be said to be promoting development that is sustainable.
He described the nexus as dynamic, evolving, and often contentious, where law's potential as a tool for social engineering is frequently undermined by weak enforcement, systemic corruption, and the nation's entrenched dependence on natural resources. A system under strain, the law, society, and the environment.
And which means for a development to be sustainable, there must be an intersection of poverty actually eradication, protection of the natural environment, and then it must at the same time, ensure that economic growth is actually sustained. And this requires role of law. And the question has always been, for those that are actually traditionalists, the perception is that, law is nothing but a tool to resolving disputes. That is an outdated perception of law in any jurisprudence today, because the role of law is beyond, a tool for dispute resolution. Because today, one of the key functions of law is to also serve as a responsive mechanism to address every conceivable problem or challenge facing humanity, facing any nation, facing any community, or facing any group of people in a given setting.
Prof. Ladan argued that while Nigeria's legal architecture is designed to promote social justice and regulate human activity, it is struggling to keep pace with rapid urbanization and industrial growth. He pointed to a critical disconnect. Societal attitudes, compounded by poverty and a lack of awareness, often lead to the flouting of environmental regulations. This friction, he noted, is vividly illustrated by the "not in my backyard" syndrome, where community resistance clashes with necessary land use changes, exposing the deep intersection of social values and legal mandates. However, the professor highlighted a beacon of hope: Nigeria's commitment to the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. He noted that the push towards Goal 7, affordable and clean energy, is forcing a paradigm shift from a rigid black-letter law approach to one that embraces environmental justice and a green economy. Navigating the New Frontier, Energy and Climate Governance 2025 to 2026. Bringing his analysis to the present, Prof. Ladan navigated the emerging landscape of environmental and energy governance. He lauded the ambition of Nigeria's Energy Transition Plan, ETP, targeting net zero by 2060, but cautioned that the regulatory framework for off-grid renewables remains beset by challenges related to grid access and certainty. He also spotlighted the nation's fledgling steps into green finance. Following the landmark Climate Change Act of 2021, the issuance of 50 billion naira sovereign green bonds in 2025, and the launch of Africa's first subnational carbon exchange by Lagos State in April 2025 were presented as pivotal, albeit nascent developments.
Inclusivity is actually fundamental for citizens to participate in decision-making process affecting their lives. You are asking citizens to cut on energy consumption that is not harmful to the environment or that will not contribute to global warming. The question, what is the alternative? And what kind of consumption pattern must they adopt? The discussions about regulating energy consumption pattern requires an attraction of inclusivity of citizens. And the second principle, following inclusivity as a guiding principle, is that our government must also provide a basis for participation of citizens in this making process affecting their lives. The two twin principles are very important. You can't discuss governance. Governance is about decision-making processes affecting the lives of the people in the sector or in that particular economy. So if they are excluded from participation, if they are not also encouraged to participate in decision-making processes affecting their lives within the sector, energy, environmental governance, inclusive, then how are you carrying the citizens along in that context?
Prof. Ladan provided a nuanced view of the sector's complexities. He discussed the dual reality of the Electricity Act 2023, which empowers states to regulate their own markets, a federalist shift with immense potential, but one that demands urgent local capacity building. Simultaneously, he addressed the paradox of the gas decades, where gas is positioned as a transition fuel, yet stringent methane reduction strategies are becoming a commercial prerequisite for accessing international capital. The Niger Delta and the quest for justice. Using the Niger Delta as a powerful case study, Prof. Ladan laid bare the human cost of regulatory failure. Decades of oil exploration have resulted in severe ecological damage, destroying livelihoods and ecosystems. He critiqued the fragmented oversight that sees the National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, NESRIA, exclude the oil and gas sector, which is instead governed by the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA. This bifurcation, he argued, creates a loophole that hampers effective protection.
But at the end of the day, what is important is the role of law to balance and address the conflict and make sure that extraction of these natural resources, that are essentially also energy related, for the common good of all citizens, in Nigeria and in Africa or in another country. That is very, very important. But what is the key issue actually today is that every developing economy in Africa, Asia, Latin America is today under a rush agenda that we should move towards energy transition, i.e., we should begin to phase out the use and exploitation or extraction, and utilization of energy resources like oil and gas and coal so that we can actually rely more on renewable energy sources for our development, and largely using solar energy, wind farms, and also using hydro electric power generated from water in order to power our electricity. But this is where it is catching. I think scholars from the developing countries, particularly from African countries, must also understand the risk involved in the rush towards energy transition.
Yet, he found reason for measured optimism in the judiciary. Despite the historical hurdle of locus standi, legal standing, Prof. Ladan commended recent judicial activism. He cited the landmark case of Jonah Gemre versus Shell as a pivotal moment where fundamental rights to life and human dignity were successfully invoked to challenge environmental degradation, setting a powerful precedent for future litigation.
And lastly, I believe strongly that one of the ways forward is to engage our communities, our local communities, and every relevant stakeholder to participate actively in environmental protection for environmental justice. And that in itself will translate into the balance for our energy governance scheme, which requires a mixed energy plan that will enable us to exploit existing natural resources responsibly, and while at the same time we invest in renewable energy resources to balance the energy mix. This is the way forward in the practical sense of it, and I believe strongly that we can actually capitalize on this intersection.
Charting a way forward, a blueprint for reform. Concluding his address, Prof. M.T. Ladan offered a clear-eyed set of recommendations for steering Nigeria towards a sustainable future. 1. Strengthen institutions. Environmental agencies like NESRIA must be adequately funded, equipped with modern monitoring technology, and empowered to prosecute offenders, especially in the powerful oil sector. 2. Establish environmental courts. Specialized courts would expedite justice and ensure that complex environmental matters are adjudicated with the requisite expertise. 3. Empower communities. Beyond awareness, Prof. Ladan called for legal mechanisms like citizen suits to enable local communities to directly enforce environmental laws. 4. Harmonize policies. He stressed the urgent need to streamline the multitude of conflicting policies on energy and environmental management into a coherent, actionable Nigerian framework. Prof. Ladan's keynote was not merely an academic exercise, but a clarion call delivered with the authority of a scholar deeply engaged with the nation's most pressing challenges. His presence at the Gombe conference, flanked by senior legal minds, underscored the critical role of intellectual leadership in navigating Nigeria's complex journey towards a just and sustainable future.